Tuesday, August 9th, 1785. Livy, a native of Padua, flourished under the reign of Augustus. Though he was expected to flatter the emperor according to the customs of the time, he so despised all forms of sycophancy that he could not help but mention it in the preface to his work. The excellence of his histories is proven by this example. A citizen of Gades, modern Cadiz, having heard of Livy's fame even in those distant lands, journeyed to Italy. Upon arriving in Rome, he paid no attention to the city's many wonders of art and architecture, but came only to see Livy himself. After laying eyes on the man, he immediately departed the city so that nothing might defile the gaze with which he had beheld Livy. Note: Titus Livius, Livy, was born in Patavium, Padua, around 59 BC, and completed his monumental Ob Urbe Condita under Augustus, though precise biographical details remain sparse. Writing history in an era when flattery of the emperor was customary, Livy nonetheless eschewed sycophancy. Indeed, he openly decries it in his preface, signaling his moral integrity. The anecdote of the Gadetan citizen, from Gades, modern Cadiz, shows Livy's renown throughout the Roman world, that a traveler would forsake Rome's architectural marvels merely to glimpse the historian and depart immediately afterward to preserve the purity of that first encounter, illustrates both Livy's personal fame and the esteem accorded to his work among contemporaries. Sunday, August 21st, 1785. Today I again attended Catholic services. Major interpreted the Catechism, and this exposition, both in the venerable interpreter's erudition and in its great clarity, pleased me immensely. Earlier in the day, a newly appointed and summoned minister of the divine word delivered a public sermon on the topic of virtue, one which I deeply regretted not having attended. Note: Major refers to a Catholic theologian or catechist active in late 18th century Württemberg, renowned for his lucid expositions of the Catechism, an instructional manual outlining core Catholic doctrines and moral teachings. His venerable erudition suggests he was a senior figure likely tasked with instructing both laypersons and clergy in foundational theology. The newly appointed and summoned minister of the divine word denotes a Protestant pastor who, upon receiving ecclesiastical confirmation, delivered a public sermon on virtue, a theme central to both Catholic and Protestant ethics. Such sermons typically drew on scriptural injunctions and classical moral exemplars to encourage moral rectitude among congregants. The juxtaposition of Major's clear Catholic instruction and the Protestant minister's sermon exemplifies the religious plurality in Stuttgart, where educated listeners like Hegel could compare and appreciate the pedagogical styles and doctrinal emphases of both confessions. Monday, August 22nd, 1785. I have often reflected to myself, and have also found it confirmed in books worthy of examination, which is the most powerful disturbance of the soul, the one that has brought the greatest calamities upon both individuals and nations, upon cities, lands, states, and kingdoms. Let us then consider what effects have been wrought by the lust for honor, the love of gold, pride, envy, despair, hatred, anger, and the desire for revenge. Note: Hegel here invokes a long-standing moral psychological tradition, confirm Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics and Augustine's City of God, asking which passion most devastates the soul. The lust for honor, ambitio, often drives rulers to reckless conquests, provoking wars that destroy cities and empires. The love of gold, avaritia, corrupts magistrates and merchants alike, fostering bribery, social inequality, and the collapse of civic virtue. Pride, superbia, engenders hubris in every station. Kings overstep their bounds, citizens discount communal law, and states fragment under overweening self-regard. Envy, invidia, breeds internal discord. Families, factions, and city-states fracture when subjects covet their neighbor's status or wealth. Consider the internecine feuds of Italian communes or the bloodletting of Rome's late republic. Finally, the desire for revenge perpetuates cycles of retaliation that can overwhelm even the strongest legal order. For example, the vendettas that hasten the decline of noble houses in medieval Europe. Each of these passions has repeatedly culminated in private ruin and public catastrophe, but classical and Christian moralists often single out pride and lust for honor as most corrosive, because they not only incite the other vices, but also strike at the very foundation of communal trust. Tuesday, August 23, 1785. Without doubt, the lust for honor, especially when combined with the desire for power, has caused the greatest public disasters. What drove Alexander the Great to wage a ruinous war against Darius, who had never wronged him? What compelled Timur, the king of Persia, who had already conquered vast parts of Asia with victorious armies and gained immense glory? What drove so many of Rome's greatest generals, whose names would be too many to list? Did not this same drive also provoke the deadly duels among students, those so-called duella, that destroyed the lives of many promising young men who were the sole consolation and joy of their parents? Note: Hegel here invokes a classical exempla, Alexander's campaign against Darius III, 334 to 330 BC, ostensibly to liberate Greek cities, yet fundamentally driven by personal ambition, illustrates how even unprovoked princes pursue glory at ruinous cost. Timur, Tamerlane, 1336 to 1405, transcended mere defense of his realm, extending his conquests across Persia and Central Asia to immortalize his name, despite already possessing immense power. In Republican and Imperial Rome, generals such as Marius, Sulla, Pompey, and Caesar repeatedly exploited military triumphs to elevate their status, upsetting Republican norms and precipitating civil wars. Hegel's inclusion of duella, student duels, reflects late 18th century German academic practice, where university students, emulating aristocratic honor codes, engaged in fencing bouts that sometimes proved fatal, cutting short promising careers and devastating families. Harold K. Koenig, Student Leben and 18th Century, pages 112 to 115.